Welcome to this new episode, holiday episode of Follow the Science. Today I'm here with Viktor Kroell, am I saying that correctly? Who I met in Levico Terme, where I'm staying for a holiday, and we talked a lot about the current situation, and he had a lot of nice and interesting things to offer from his former background.
Exactly.
I am Michaéla Schippers, I'm professor of behavior and performance management, and I do all these talks on a personal title, and I will ask Viktor to introduce himself.
Yeah, I'm Viktor. I studied information design and worked for about 10 years in advertising, in communication. I did a lot of work for media strategic purposes for big multinationals, and so I have a little bit of insight how media manipulation works. Yes.
Media manipulation, and you
Yeah.
have the idea that we see that a lot these days, or?
I think I have the idea that we are growing up in some kind of media conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
So we are growing our children inside a media conditioned world where they are all perceiving their role models from the media, from the TV, from the cartoons, from the comic books, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they are like Slavoj Žižek, the Slovenian philosopher, says he's a media philosopher, and he points out that we don't have like I interpret his idea that we don't have our own perception of ourselves. It's a media.
So it's a constructed perception, basically.
Exactly,
that's what you're saying.
It's a construction.
Yeah, that's also what at least constructivist psychology says. But you had a lot of questions from a psychological perspective, right? You were we were discussing.
I was interested your point of view because I have.
Maybe it's nice to see how we met, because basically I'm on a holiday here, and I was not planning of doing any episodes, and then I was walking along the lake and I saw this beautiful art, and I met in the evening, and then the other day I walked again along the lake and I saw the artists making these nice flowers, and so we talked about backgrounds, and it turned out you were here with your wife and moved to Levico and
Yes.
make all this nice art. So you've moved from advertising to art.
Yeah. Because for me I had some kind of burnout, and I could not do this anymore because I had always an inner conflict.
Mm-hmm.
I could not go against my inner vision anymore. So I become very spiritual in this time, I have to say, and I have to admit.
But did it have to do with the fact that you're basically, if you're in advertising, you have to sell something? So basically you do not get to choose what you want to sell, because
Yes.
selling or letting people know about a good lifestyle, about positive things, is maybe easier than to say, okay, I want to sell some stuff and materialistic stuff. I don't know. If that's,
No, the point is, I figured out for myself, the things what you really need in life, you don't need to make advertising for. So the most thing what we are buying or what advertising is to sell or try to sell are things which you don't really need in your life.
such as? This here. Look around. You mean?
How can you say it? I became very, very basic in my living.
Mm-hmm.
So when I compare myself 15 years ago and now, I have, if you have as a measurement, like let's say the ecological footprint, which is a measurement, I'm maybe a third
of what you were before. Yeah.
But now I have a family, so even.
Well, that's more people, so that is. But I was at your house and I saw you had a garden and you eat things from the garden, and
Yes.
You invited me to your house, which was really nice, and so that was, I think, really good. And you asked me to do this episode to, if I'm correct, to also for the Italian community, not only, of course, or exclusively, because I don't speak Italian, or not. It's a little bit rusty, let's put it that way. And so, because we talked about that, I have been working on, because in 2020 I noticed that, of course, we've been living with indoctrination and all these kind of things before, but from 2020 on, it seemed like from, let's say, relatively normal level to extreme levels.
Exactly.
And it's for
because
me.
Because you're not allowed to question anything.
Right. And it for me it was more manipulation and about power and control all of a sudden, instead of that people were still free to question things also in academia.
Yeah, it's not a discussion anymore. It's just okay. It's or we talk about the cancel culture, but it's we are not about to debate the facts. It's just okay. This is the fact, and if you don't believe these facts, which are presented to us, you are buzzword conspiracy theorist or whatever.
Yeah, you're dehumanized.
You get dehumanized.
You're not. You're put into a category, so we don't have to listen to you anymore.
And these are strategies out of the communication. So this is what the spin doctor does.
Okay, so you recognize that from your field. So
yes,
because I recognized it from psychology. I was like, oh, this is what I've been taught about. You know, after World War II, we've been looking into all these manipulation tactics and how they worked and how it came to be that people started to go along with really destructive policies. And now it seems like we are doing the same, whether or not these are destructive policies, but the push to go along is there.
Yeah, but you have, for example, if you have as an example the Second World War, it's clear, okay, if they're coming people with the swastika and etc., these are the bad guys.
Well, I'm not sure if that was clear for people at that time.
At that time not, but
no.
now
we know.
Now we learned that this is what we have to watch for. While the real Nazis, let's say, or the real autocratic, authoritarian people maybe appear in a completely different way.
Yeah, but if you look at a really high level at this, it's all about power and control, I would say, because if you control the media, you control the minds, is something that's been said before. But to a certain extent, that's true, because your message gets all the attention, and the other messages you can suppress.
Exactly.
And
but this is now possible because of our algorithms, our centralized media control, which is all the social media companies are situated in the Silicon Valley. So you have a concentration, you have a monopoly in everything nowadays, and so you don't have a biodiversity of media anymore.
Well, I think that has grown after 2020. That it was, but it's been actively suppressed. That's been. You have the Twitter files. There's all kinds of files that show that there's active suppression, even from the government, from the companies that run like Google. And the companies that like Facebook and etc. They all suppressed information actively. But so you wanted me to talk about specific manipulation tactics that are being used, right?
I wanted to talk about, for example, you came up with something, the life crafting, for example, which would be a positive way of manipulation. Yes. Or self-manipulation.
Actually, yeah, you can. Well, I wouldn't call it manipulation, because you're not. Manipulation is there's no freedom in. So what I think is you have positive psychology tactics that you can use, and psychology tactic can be used to like a knife, you can cut some vegetables, or you can kill somebody with it. So there's the same tool that you can use for good and for bad. So I was thinking, how can we make sure that people are the best possible self? If you put them in a state of fear and survival, you will see the worst possible self.
Okay, and this is what happened in the last 3 years.
I saw, because I know that when people in power start to behave dysfunctionally, and if they get more power, they will start using it. And so they have been concentrating power in the elite, and then the masses start to behave dysfunctionally, and this feeds back into the elite again, and they start to behave dysfunctionally. So you get this downward spiral of dysfunctional behavior, more suppression, more dysfunctional behavior, more suppression.
So we're going into a depressive state of the society.
Basically, yes.
Out of the psychologic point of view.
At least in my idea, that's what I feel is going on, and it's literal also, because we were not able to move much, and depression is going downward, and it also literally people stay in one place. People who are really depressed don't want to go out of their homes, but now we put people in their homes, and they start becoming depressed, and they stay in their homes more than normal, and the end state is not moving at all. Like a very depressed person won't get out of bed.
When you talk about depression, I mean, I grew up, got my music socialization when in the late 80s, early 90s, and I realized that there was this new wave music, grunge, etc. It was some kind of a lot of depressive music, if you want. So you had, and then also in rap, etc. You have always these negative influences. So is it possible that our society or the Western society goes in this state of depression through music, through films, through Hollywood movies, etc., that this can push it? This did push us already in this
Could
direction?
be, yeah. It's not maybe pushing, but it's the context plays a role, of course. So if you are listening a lot to these kind of music, because you can still choose other music, right, as a person. So you always, I believe in having a personal choice. But if you choose for that, and some people already go down this spiral, and they keep on, getting the wrong stimuli. So you have to make sure you break this negative chain. And that's why I also came up with life crafting. And it's basically writing. I had students for years writing about their ideal life when there were no constraints, versus writing about their life that will come to pass if they don't change anything. And then they think about, of course, this is the heart of the intervention, it's not the whole intervention. And then they think about, it's for instance also inspired on the work that Jordan Peterson did with goal setting and future altering. And so what you do is think about, what is the ideal life that I want for myself? And then in the second part, students write about, okay, if this is my ideal life, what is my goal then? What do I want to achieve? And they write about this goal in detail. Why is it so important? What if I don't reach this goal? What if I do reach this goal? Because some people want to become a world champion, but if you are a world champion and you don't have any friends anymore, or you don't have time for other things, so you have to consider all these downsides of your goals as well.
Okay.
And then I saw that my students started to do much better. Like they had a 22% increase in study success. The difference between the worst and the best students disappeared. So the good students did a little bit better, but the worst students started to do much better.
Okay.
So the differences between men and women disappeared. In our school, women did better than men. But that disappeared after a year, 98% closure of that gap. And for ethnic minority students, there was a 38% closure of the gap in the first year and a 93% closure in the second year. So a very small intervention of like at most 4 hours of writing had all these effects.
Okay.
Which is really cool.
So it was a self-motivating method what you offered to the
students. Yeah, I think the most important thing was that students started to think, what do I want? because you can. A lot of people think, what does my family want? What does society ask from me? But then they started to think, why did I choose this study? Like the management study. What do I think is important? And my fear was that students would leave and choose do psychology or something, because I'm in the management school, Rotterdam School of Management. And we had 700 first-year students, and I thought, whoa, what if they leave, and think I'm going to do philosophy or I don't know, psychology. But that didn't happen. Students, we had 22% increase in the students that stayed. Usually they would, 50% of our students would leave after the first year or had to leave because they didn't perform well. And so
it was positive in all fields? In
all aspects that I measured, it was positive. Okay. I didn't find, and because I was also measuring, maybe they get more stress, but that was not true.
And do you think it is possible in a time like now to spread this to the whole society?
Yes. Definitely, yeah. Actually, that's a good question, because I don't have a big marketing machine, but theoretically this is very scalable. For instance, we also developed a chatbot where we can build this in, and so everybody could basically use it and do it for themselves. You can start tonight if you want to.
So do you think there is a possibility to combine this method with analyzing your media consumption and your media self, what is created, constructed out of your media consumption, analyze it, deconstruct it, and then you find out who you are, and then you make these, I'm just guessing.
I think people are already writing about this. For instance, they write about habits that they want to decrease. So, for instance, they could write, and a lot of them do, I want to watch less TV, I want to do more sports. And so these are many of the goals that students already write down. And for instance, I want to use less alcohol. So they can write about anything they want, about their career, the friends they want to see, because also a lot of influence is from the friends and family that you see. And of course you can change your family, but you can change the for instance, if you have a brother that is really positive, having a positive influence on you, or a sister or a mother, then see this person more often, and then see the other ones that have a negative influence on you at least a bit less. Or try to shut yourself from it, but that's really, for me, it's really difficult to do. And then you can write about, a lot of people already say, the default is to sit in front of the TV sometimes. But if you replace that with something else, another activity, like doing some sports, or going outside in nature, and we know from research that being in the green is really good for your mental health. So start doing that, only 1 minute a day. I always say start very small. Go out of the house, do it 1 or 2 minutes or 10 minutes a day. And then build it up from there.
Okay, something what you can start from your state of being now.
Yes.
But for me,
at the moment, one more thing, I made it available on ikikaitv.nl, and ikigai means purpose in life, and I made it for now available for free for everyone to use it. And I also developed a letter to the future. Because what I think is, if people write about their ideal future, if there were no constraints for the world, and the future that will come to pass if we don't do anything, and make goals for what you can contribute to a better world, that may also work. But you can choose which one you want to start with, like from an individual standpoint or from a world standpoint. And at the same time, I also wrote, which is inspired on the Declaration of Independence, but also which is before that, that's the Act of Abjuration, which is a Dutch Declaration of Independence from medieval times, from 1581, after we fought the Spanish for 80 years. And I wrote the Great Citizens Declaration, and it's about freedom. It's about what are the important values that we have, like humaneness, freedom, wisdom, co-creation. So these are really important values, I think. And you can sign it if you want, everybody can.
But my question maybe I address it with some a little story. I made a bonfire in the garden, like grill for grilling with the children. With the youngsters around 13. And a friend of my son, he came and said when my son came with some marshmallows, he said, "Wow, I was dreaming all my life about doing marshmallows on the fire." And I thought, yeah, why he's thinking, why a dream of
marshmallows on a fire?
Exactly.
My son, exactly the same.
Yeah, but why?
But that's
is
very
this?
American.
Exactly, because this is what is in the movies, in every Hollywood movie. When it's about outside experience, you have this.
Yes, my son had to say. This is really interesting,
and
because
this is what I'm talking about. How to get this construction, what is implanted in our brains through media. How is there a method to analyze this and to understand what is your real self? Is there a real self, or are we anyway a product of the influences around? And so you cannot go to the core back.
That's a good question, and that's a very philosophical question that I don't think I can even answer, because you are in part a product of genes, in part a product of your environment, but there is a little bit more to that. I always say the end state is more than the parts. It's not just co-located atoms. We are not just. I'm just reading this book by this former surgeon, Talos, and he's writing really interesting about it. I'm halfway, so I don't know what his idea is, but we have the idea there is more than that, and I think it's a meaning in life that we can derive ourselves, and that brings us more to the core self than having these all these influences and these dreams that we get from television. Because I was surprised too by my son saying that he wanted to camp and do marshmallows, because I never dreamt of that. Because we didn't have television when I was young, and maybe that was not in fashion at that time, I don't know.
No, I think this is since the 70s it's an issue.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm from the 70s, so don't worry. But I never dreamt of that. Besides, I didn't like sweets, but... but I had this also at a certain point in life. Okay, marshmallows. I wanted to try it, you know. But this is what I mean with advertising, etc. This is what it implants in our. Yeah, well, maybe psyche. We should also change the environment then. Why not have in a lot of places, let's say, healthy food? The first thing people see if they enter the supermarket is this healthy stuff, and try to get the unhealthy stuff as far as possible out of sight, and make it a little bit more expensive instead of making the fruits and vegetables expensive.
When parents say something to the children and then do something completely else, or the opposite, so they're obviously lying, after a while it can cause schizophrenia. I'm
not sure if it causes schizophrenia, but I think the kid will be angry, and also they don't know what to expect anymore, because the parent is saying one thing and doing the other thing, and you never know. So you learn to distrust your own parents, I think, too. And maybe that can also, you start to distrust other people, so it can generalize to society at large.
Because if for example, the government or the media lies all the time to you, and you realize at a certain point in time that everything is a lie, what does it to the society?
Everything is lie. Yeah, some people say everything is a lie, and so I think there's different kinds of people. Even if you tell one lie, and a person finds out he or she can distrust everything else, and then is completely doesn't have an anchor anymore. Other people will say, okay, they will lie about some things but not about other things, and then other people will think, oh, this was only a few lies, and some people lie and some people don't. So I think everybody will have a different reaction to it, but it can cause a lot of mental health problems. but also, let's say, the measures from the last 3 years caused extreme number of health problems in young people, especially in young people, actually, because older people, like.
What happened, for example?
So if you close the schools, children sit at home. So there were students that didn't have a future anymore. All of a sudden, instead of studying, they were sitting at home or having to do online classes, or so it was very different. And they didn't see their the other students, and young people are especially in need of developing their socio-emotional skills. So it's been like very young children didn't learn how to talk because of the mouth masks also. They didn't see the emotions. So there's so many things, like even a handshake we would exchange like on a physiological level, like let's say pheromones and stuff like that, that people don't even know about, but touching, being part of a group, so all the social interactions that we have a function. And if you skip the social interaction, then this has so many effects on so many levels and so many mental health issues.
Okay.
I can't even start to describe the many of them, because all of the things we do have a social function. You can't just skip it. And only for 1 or 2 people it was okay. Like if you're very autistic.
This was definitely the down spiral, and with the life crafting and the letters to the future, you would have the opposite.
Yeah, I've been talking about an ant mill. So like this series of dysfunctional decision making that is followed by another dysfunctional decision making from elite and masses. And so ants are like army ants.
Yeah.
They tend to prey together. So they go out and they follow each other's pheromones, and then they prey. But sometimes it goes wrong. You can also induce it, but don't do that. That's really nasty. But then they start to follow each other's pheromones and tend to go around in circles. And all of a sudden I had the idea, as a society.
And what happened then?
What happens then, they keep going and they keep on going, and then they collapse at a certain point in time because they're exhausted and they don't have any food, and they sometimes push out the dead ants and then keep on going.
Okay.
So what I want people to do is step out of this ant mill, reflect on what they want in life, and then follow another path. So get out of the ant mill and take your own path, or go and do things with another group, form a network of people that you want to have more contact with, like for instance people that want to form a community, or people who want to, let's say, have a garden together, and I don't know what, but everybody, because there's a lot of gurus also out there that say, the government is not doing right, I have a better solution. And I'm not offering a better solution. I don't want to be a guru, but what I want is that people think for themselves and be their own guide.
So you want to be just an inspiration giver.
Yes, inspiration, and also I have this knowledge of positive psychology, and I would like to share it with the world, because I think there's too much copyright issues and all these kind of things, but I want people to know about these. For instance, I made 5 challenges, like a gratefulness challenge, where you write about what you're grateful for, and even these small things can make a small change in how you perceive the world. For instance, I can say, hey, it's rainy today and I don't like the weather and I'm going to sit inside. But I can also look at like the nice sky, the nice view, and everything that's beautiful in the world. And so where you focus on is going to be reflected in your mental health, in your depressive state. So if you look at something very ugly and you focus on that and you can't change it, then you will feel bad.
So that means we should not go for the bad news anymore?
That would be a good idea. Shut up. So for a week, no TV. That's a good detox, I think.
and then start to make our own visions.
Yeah.
That's good.
And so shut off the TV. Write your own vision for the future. Start to go out in nature a little bit more. Enjoy it, and that is a good start, I think. So gratefulness journal is like 3 times a week you write about what you're grateful for. So for instance, very small. I had a great coffee today. I had a nice conversation with you. I'm meeting nice people. So 3 things. And you do that 3 times a week for 2 weeks.
that's already changing a little bit this trajectory from downward to
Upwards.
looking in a positive way. Then you can write a gratitude letter.
Mhm.
Let's say I have somebody that I'm really thankful for, and I haven't thanked him or her enough yet, or I feel like that I should. And so you write this letter, what you're thankful for and why, and if you want, you can send the letter. You can even go to this person, read the letter, and that all has an effect. And it's even shown that the person who gets the letter is more. It has more impact than you would expect.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know that I do all these things myself as well.
Yeah.
So I.
You are your own laboratory rat.
Yes, I write the intervention and then I'm doing it and then see what happens. And then it's really interesting because I know there's research that this gratitude letter, that it does more to people than you would think. And then I'm writing it, and while I'm writing I think, yeah, she knows it. I did it for my, I call it my second mother. It's when I left home at 17, I started to live with my aunt. And I wrote her this letter. And then I was writing, I already told her that, and she knows that already. That was, and I read it to her, and then of course, it did me a lot, but also her.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see you're very happy, a happy person. You smile a lot.
Yeah.
And we are in Italy, and you're from the north, but you're smiling more than the Italians.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure why, but I didn't know that. But I'm just a happy person, but also happy when I'm here. Even more happy.
Yeah.
Because
so I would say it's a good end for our interview, because I wanted to leave it with some positive viewpoints, and I think you give a good example how to do.
Yeah. Okay.
How
thank
to
you.
change it.
Well, you can, if you want, you
And
can
now
change your life tonight.
And now we can shake the pheromones. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.